Welcome to Inspired Changemakers, a podcast about all the amazing things people are doing to make the world a better place. This podcast is about creating change and the moments that inspired our guests to activate. My name is Julia Healey, and I'm the CEO of United Charitable. Stay tuned to be inspired. All right, well, Fred, welcome to the podcast.
I am thrilled to be here, Julie.
Inspired Changemakers is really about people that inspire change, and the definition of that is definitely you.
Okay.
And so let me go through your bio. So Fred Baerenz has, since 2000, really you have served as the president and chief executive officer of AOG Wealth Management. You are also the CEO and president of AOG Institutional Fund. I can't wait to get into that.
Okay.
You began your wealth management career in 1986, serving as a branch manager and vice president for two national title insurance corporations. And you earned a BA in government, history, and economics from the College of William and Mary.
Yes.
So what was your first job out of college?
Well, I was a lifeguard and swim instructor through college.
Okay.
And then when I was in grad school, I worked for a Hilton Hotel, first in Raleigh and then in Charlottesville.
And so what really gave you this want to go into finance?
You know, I actually got an appointment to the Air Force Academy, so I thought I was going to be a jet pilot, maybe an astronaut. But with my astigmatism, they said, you know, you're welcome to come, but you forget about flight school. So then I thought, well, I'd like to maybe be a diplomat and work on world peace.
Yeah.
And so I studied government history and economics at William and Mary. But I've always had a natural bend toward business. And my dad really got a big laugh later. He wanted me to immediately go into the investment world. It's like, nah, Dad, that's boring. But I was, after working for Hilton Hotels in Raleigh and Charlottesville, I went to work for a commercial real estate lawyer in Charlottesville. Okay. He had a branch office here in Leesburg, in Loudoun County. And so I moved up to that and then got picked up by First Commonwealth Land Title, then First American Title. And initially my work had to do with researching real estate records, and so then you get into trust and estate and how wills and trusts work. And then I underwrote title insurance, so there's a financial calculation that goes with that, a risk-reward kind of assessment that needs to be made. But then I started doing escrow, so I was actually conducting real estate closings. Okay. Ironically, some of the biggest projects I work on are, again, here in Loudoun. In the mid or early 80s, I handled the project to expand Washington Dulles International Airport. They had 1,200 acres on the west side toward what would become Ashburn and Ashburn Farm. And then the Greenway, our company handled that project. So 23 parcels from Dulles Airport out to Leesburg.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and then I did a lot of the work for the Lerner family, so Dulles Mall. I also handled that project.
And then, so what then made the leap from like the real estate game into financial advising?
Well, so interestingly, a lot of the work I did was primarily commercial, and so I did work for insurance companies, endowment funds, sovereign wealth funds, ultra-high net worth individuals. And so everyone I knew had a pretty big chunk of real estate in their portfolio, sometimes 10, 20, 30%, sometimes 100%. But then after the savings and loan crisis, which led to the Resolution Trust score, I did work for them, commercial real estate just stopped. And so then I got moved over to the residential section, which is like watching paint dry. But I did closings for Smith Barney and Merrill Lynch clients. Okay. And then I started looking at their statements and how investments were working. I thought, well, I could do this. And so then I transitioned into personal wealth management in 1993.
Wow. So you have seen like the stock market, the dot-com bubble of the 2000. You've gone through the 2008 recession. Like you've been in it for some time now.
Well, and honestly, in the 70s, I remember having to wait in line for gas, gas stations, and the impact of what hyperinflation and the so-called malaise effect of Jimmy Carter's years, which was really a combination of Johnson, Nixon, Ford, and Carter. I saw Paul Volcker come in with Ronald Reagan and raise interest rates to incredible heights. I mean, people were paying 19, 20% on mortgages. And so I've seen the absolutely devastating effect of high inflation. But I've also seen how real estate, can help settle down a portfolio.
So that's interesting, and that's kind of what we've connected on, is that I did both my degrees during a down market. So I went to college from 1999 to 2003 with a finance degree. So I learned
the tech wreck.
the tech.
Yeah.
So maybe me going back to school is like recession prone. And then I did my MBA from 2007 to 2009. So that was just a great time.
Well, wait a minute, if you're going back to school now,
I know.
let me get to cash quickly.
I know, really good. But it was really interesting because I've only learned about finance in protective mode. I've only learned about it, and when my teachers would teach about it, it would always be in a down market or when real estate or other things could have looked more or could have settled portfolio. And that's one of the things that we connected over, is because I'd like to thank United Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. United Charitable is a national nonprofit that focuses on guiding you on your charitable journey. Whether you like to simply streamline your giving or you like to create your own charitable initiative, United Charitable has the knowledge and resources to support you. If you'd like to learn more, check out the link in our bio. Here I am at like United Charitable, or reconciling investment statements and doing all of this, and I'm looking over all of these investment portfolios and nobody uses real estate. And I'm learning in school modern portfolio theory, the efficient frontier, like all these things. And I was like, wait, are there advisors that do believe in this and that do, like, is there a translation between what we're learning in school in an MBA program into like I had a whole class on modern portfolio theory. It was the name of the class.
Well, and so when I started in 93, I would raise my hand. They were teaching the so-called three-legged stool. I was in class with Smith Barney. Of stocks, bonds, and cash. And I would say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. And I'd raise my hand and say, what about real estate? And they'd say, no, we do stocks, bonds, and cash. And later I realized that their trepidation was because we had the so-called partnership debacles of the 1980s, where people could write off 4 times their investment. And the tax benefit was so great that the underlying investment was really immaterial. And unfortunately, when the Tax Reform Act went through in 1986, people hear the saying, everybody loves to swim naked until the tide goes out.
Right.
Well, the tide went out on those investments, and they were exposed for being, a tax vehicle that had no strong economic underpinning. And so, it almost took a number of broker-dealers down because of all the client complaints. And so they really decided to, I think, for the most part, eliminate those asset classes for people under, say, $50 million. And so, fortunately, a friend of mine had just read David Swenson's book. David took over the Yale Endowment Fund, I think, in 1986, and he wrote his first book in 93. And I said, that's it. If I could do that for regular individuals, typically accredited investors at $1 million plus, and not have them have to wait until they're at $50 million, which many don't ever get to, I think I could do a better job with portfolio management. And so I began to do the research and figure out how to do that at the lower end of the spectrum.
And then what made you want to bring philanthropy into your entire world?
Well, I was always raised to do, good works. My mom and dad, both encouraged us, whether it was through church or with the American Red Cross or, any number of organizations.
Do you remember your earliest volunteer moment? Or what the first thing you volunteered for?
We were in the Philippines when it rained for 91 straight days. And, of course, the Air Force Base was well constructed. We had good drainage and so forth. But they were flying in these C-5As. Those are the things where they can fit like 3 double-decker London buses on them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Full of potable water and rice. And so I remember going out with my parents to help distribute, rice and potable water, out in the villages.
And so it was just always in your fabric. You just don't remember a time that you weren't giving back.
No, I've always, family's always been part of, volunteer community, make the world a better place. And so it's just kind of intuitive to me to do that. But of course, as working more and accumulating more assets, more ability to, it's all time, treasure, and talents, but certainly a little more treasure than I had when I was, in my early youth.
And now also incorporating philanthropy into the firm.
Well, so when she and I founded the firm, we set out some hard ironclad rules. First of all, we wanted to have a great client experience. We wanted to have a really high value proposition to clients. We knew it was going to take a team, and we wanted a really good team that was motivated, to serve clients well, not just to, make the most money possible. And so I think we've recruited a team that way. And if you're going to spend 40, sometimes 50 hours a week with a group of people, outside of their waking hours, that's probably as much time as they spend with their families. And so you might as well have good working relationships and have good common purpose. And so I guess we just naturally recruited people for whom that resonated. And, I'd say it, but the approach to charity through our firm was really a kind of a back door. I mean, we do a lot of tax mitigation things like 1031 exchanges, oil and gas drilling opportunity zones. And so just on that checklist is a donor advised fund or, just giving generally as part of a tax strategy. And so while we talk about it really as a mechanism or as a tool, because we don't want to guilt people into doing something like that. They don't have to do it. It's just a strategy that we offer. But if that resonates with clients, well, then, of course, we love to share with them what we do. And it's on our website, the things that we're involved in. And I think that that perhaps attracts certain kinds of investors to our firm.
I would like to thank Athletes Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. Athletes Charitable offers a concierge membership service that provides the tools and resources to build a legacy through service. Our athlete-led team has the first-hand experience and expertise to provide hands-on support that simplifies the entire process for athletes and entertainers to reach their social entrepreneurship goals and create lasting impact in their communities. To learn more, check out the link in the bio.
Right. So, and also too, then how have you incorporated it into your family?
Well, so Sheila and I were the coordinators at our church for a program called Crown Ministries. And it's a 12-week Bible study. It's about 2 hours of study every week and then about 2 hours of group discussion. And it's based on biblical principles of giving. It's better to give than to receive, that sort of thing. And so we actually led that for about 10 years at our church.
Oh, wow.
And we would have about 700 people a year go through it at its peak. And this is a church that grew its church population by tenfold, and the church budget by tenfold from the late 90s to the mid 2010
Wow.
Area. And so it's really exciting to see people, and more than just the fact that it made money available for good works, is the feeling that I can do this. I have power, I have control, I have say-so here. And so getting people to understand, how to budget, or as we call it, how to have a spending plan. Because, diets are no fun, but an eating plan is great.
Right.
So same thing, nobody wants a budget, but if you have a spending plan, that's great. And so seeing people empowered, and then once they had control of it, it might sound like a silly thing, but I can remember when we were trying to knock out some debt. We would have a snack before we went to the theater. We would go to the theater, on Tuesday nights or Saturday matinees because it was less expensive.
Right.
And then we were actually tracking, the extra debt payments we were making to knock out debt. And so that was just so inspiring. And then, when you free up that money, you get to decide, do you want to do more in giving? Do you want to increase your lifestyle? Do you want to put more toward, future savings for future needs? But it's just so empowering. And that's why we talk about within our firm, the work optional lifestyle. We help people, through our strong financial planning and strong asset management. Here's a point at which you should be able to completely stop working, and whether it's through pensions or Social Security or your own savings, you should be able to support yourself for the rest of your life. And unlike many financial plans that have a depletion curve, okay, if you don't live too long, we think you should make it to 91. Now, if you go to 92, that might be a tough year for you. We like to run financial plans where the value keeps going up, adjusted with inflation. And again, most people, whether they want to leave money to kids or grandkids or special charities or other causes, we like the thought that they're not thinking about running out of money or under pressure. I had 3 grandparents that lived into their 90s, and they all died in good shape, but they all died a little bit worried about running out of money. Now, they trusted me implicitly, but they had lived through the Depression, so their idea of asset diversification was, how many banks do you have a CD in? And when interest rates were really high in the 80s, that was great. But when interest rates started dropping in the 90s, early 2000s, that's when they got under a little bit of pressure because a special need would come up. They'd have to cash out a CD. There were fewer assets there at a lower interest rate. And so, again, they all died, several $100,000, but all died a little bit worried about running out of money.
And it's so funny is because I've had the pleasure to support people in their philanthropy journey and to see what really brings them joy. And it's not necessarily the dollar amount they give. How do you see your clients really being joyful in their giving?
Well, in some cases, it's very private, and so while we might help them with dollar amounts, what they decide to do with the money is, obviously completely up to them. But we have had the real honor and privilege of being heavily involved in charitable giving, and it's almost like watching a light bulb come on sometimes. Some clients come to us, they already have very strong ideas on charity, but in many cases we get to watch the journey unfold right in front of our eyes, where and I think we hosted that one event about 10 years ago, and we had a client who's a multimillionaire, and gave a little bit, but came to the program that we did, and I remember coming after and say, well, I could do this. We've got a community theater, and we got this and this and this and this. And so watching the joy come to him just because he got an idea presented that he just hadn't had before. And then, of course, with our strong financial planning, when we have clients come in that are retired, most of our clients are self-made multimillionaires. And they got there because they were always very, very careful. And so once they've retired and we're looking at the budget and looking at all future needs and things, we ask 3 questions. Are you doing the things that give you joy that you always thought you'd like to do? Secondly, are you helping out your family, your friends, anybody that you think that you can give to that would be helpful to them? Third, are there causes around your neighborhood or things that you'd like to give to? And then and only then we'll say, well, okay, if you check 1, 2, and 3, I'll reinvest this money for you. But we operate under an abundance theory, and so we like the idea that they spend the income, let the principal keep growing, hopefully equal to or greater than inflation once we get out of the cycle we're in. But so many firms are either by nature or by management are taught the scarcity theory. Oh, better not spend money. You might need this, you might need that. Who knows what's going to happen? And there's no fun in that. And I think our model, supports our investment model support the abundance model. And so, when people come in and you just tell them, you're chiding them a little bit, you're not spending enough money. We had a client come in, and he said, well, I did it. Okay, what'd you do? He said, well, I took my daughter, down to Florida for vacation, and we stayed in nice hotels, we ate good meals. And we're down there for a week, and about the 3rd or 4th day, she said, Dad, are you dying? And he said, no. And she said, well, why are we doing this? He said, my financial advisor told me I wasn't spending enough money, so we're having fun. She's like, oh, thank goodness. I thought something was wrong.
And it's so funny because money is such a personal thing to people. And it's in talking to people and dealing with clients, we have no problem in our society going to a doctor if we're sick or we need something, right? But money is the thing that causes divorce. It's so personal to people. Why do you think they struggle so much, actually talking to a financial advisor?
Well, in many cases, it's family upbringing. My dad was very reluctant to talk to me about money. His parents never talked about money.
Yeah.
And so that gets passed down generationally. I spent a lot of time with the pastor that married me and Sheila. We were in a men's group together. And we had a little bit of a diverging thought on this. He said that 50% of all divorces are because of money.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I actually think it's 50% of divorces are about failing to communicate, and money just happens to be the lightning bolt that failure of communication lands on. One of the things that Sheila and I did when we went through marriage preparation 27 years ago is we committed to once a year, taking at least a day, sometimes a weekend, to just do a family business retreat and just talk about, okay, here's where we stand, here's what we're thinking about, here's what we want to focus our giving on this year. We've been paying our mortgage down extra, we're almost done with that. We've got some long-term savings goals that we haven't quite hit yet, although we're close. But it's just to be able to step back and kind of talk it through. And not that we don't have conversations throughout the year. We make adjustments, all the time. But just having that family business meeting once a year, I think is probably, it's almost like, getting good muscle tone so you don't, tear a muscle when you're trying to do something.
Right.
You have that, or vaccination or something to keep you from getting sick. You've already talked it through, so when something unexpected comes up, you already have a good methodology for dealing with it.
And what has been the what charity have you or causes have you really connected with throughout your life?
How long is the show?
Right.
You use the word impact. I mean, it's in your model here. And we've always focused on impact giving. And there's a million things you can give money to, and there's a lot of good reasons to do that. But we'd like to give our money and our time and our talent where we can see real change affected. and empower people to help themselves. So probably our favorite has been David's Hope. I've been to Kenya 5 times. We've helped a very, very poor community there, build a medical clinic, a couple of churches, pre-kindergarten through high school. And then one of my partners, Scott Sweat, actually left our firm a few years ago because he found a for-profit exercise that could help teach better farming practices. And so while we touched 25,000 people around the village of Aburu, the company he's developed over there is now touching hundreds of thousands of families by putting in good farming practices. There's a plant called perithrum that provides a great, very healthy kind of way to kill weeds, but without polluting water and land and soil and so forth. And so that's probably been the most important thing done charitably. Another cause I've been involved with is Jill's House. I had a brother who was Down syndrome. And when I was 7, we lost him in what was known as the Hong Kong flu of 68, 69. It killed almost 200,000 people. So it was kind of between COVID and the Spanish flu of, like 1919, 1920. Right. So anyway, I lost my brother when he was 10. And there was a time when, with my mom, my dad had to go back to Vietnam. He was a great guy, very high functioning, but he would oftentimes toward evening have struggle breathing. And so the question was, do you throw him in the shower, run the steam, and try to open up the passages, or do you race for the hospital? And so we had lots of friends and family who would be willing to help, but my mom could just never not be there in case he needed her. And so we discovered Jill's House going to McLean Bible Church. Lon and Brenda Solomon had 3 typical sons, but their daughter began having thousands of seizures when she was about 6 months old. And so even with all the help they got from the church, they realized that there were a lot of people that were really struggling that didn't have as much help. And so they started Jill's House as an overnight opportunity, generally about once a quarter. Parents can leave their children for a weekend, have all the healthcare workers that are necessary to take care of these special needs kids. Because the divorce rate, we're talking about divorce rate with over money, the divorce rate among the parents of severely disabled children is like 90% plus. And so what we found is if you can just give those parents a break, once a quarter, that's enough for them to have a date night, sleep, do things with their typical kids, and have a more normal family life. So I've been very involved in Jill's House for more than 20 years now as well. So those are probably the 2 main ones. And then the third one, I happen to have a visual challenge called retinitis pigmentosus. And while you wouldn't wish it on anybody, if you're going to get it, you want it like me. Most of my friends that we've been working with for 20 years go blind in their early 50s. And so I'm in my early 60s, and I still have a pretty good visual field. So we started that 19 years ago. We started with walks. We actually have our 19th walk coming up in May. And just our Northern Virginia chapter has raised over $3 million. And so, when we first started, a friend of mine, our son and daughter were in the same class at Herndon Middle School. They had all 7 classes together. And it was later that year that they both got tested. My son doesn't have it. Her daughter does. And, we knew that we probably wouldn't be able to effect a cure that would matter to us, but we thought, okay, let's start working now, and so maybe the next generation. So RP affects over 100,000 people in the U.S., probably a couple million people worldwide. If you include things like macular degeneration as one of the retinal diseases, that's a couple million people in the U.S. So there's amazing, incredible research going on. None of it's working great yet, but it may actually be something that would help me in the next 5 years.
It's so hard. And my daughter, I think I've shared this with you, but my youngest daughter has Duane syndrome, where her eye doesn't correctly rotate. She doesn't have any peripheral vision in her right eye.
Okay.
And so there's there's things that we could do to make it better for her. So sometimes her how she sees straight, she has to kind of tilt her head in order to, so she walks like this, and she's 7, and it's very interesting because until it happens to you or you're around it in some way, you're like, oh wow, I didn't even know any of this existed.
Yeah. That's one of the things I've gotten involved in. There was a friend of mine who was a special education teacher here in Loudoun, and so I remember coming out and presenting to a group of about 15 or 20 parents, because as a parent you find out something's wrong with your kid, it's just a stab in your heart. And so to be able to give information, resources, and frankly, encouragement, again, that's all part of the giving mentality.
And what do you do when people come to you like there's too much to change? The world is too far gone. Like, what do you say to people that have that mentality? Like, I can't make enough of an impact. I don't have enough money, all that.
It's important to just start small. And so, if you think about, from a biblical teaching, it talks about tithing, giving 10% of first fruits. Now, for many people, giving 10% of their gross income is like, wait a minute. I've got this debt, I've got that debt, I need to do this and that and the other. It's like, okay, well, if that's too much, start with, $25 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. And, for me, it's a faith thing. But I just think that, whether it's a specific sort of faith or if it's just the karma within the universe, whatever that might be, when you do good things, you tend to get encouraged and start thinking, okay, this is pretty good. It's addictive. And you want to do more good things. So if you just start small, a little bit of time, finding a talent you have that you can donate to a certain organization, money, you start just start and then see where it goes.
And one thing that's also interesting about you, Fred, is that maybe was it 2 years ago you started the fund? When did you actually start?
So we started.
How old were you when you started the fund?
3 years ago. So
okay.
I was 59. And I had just been asked to speak at the opening meetings of two association conferences. And in both cases, we were coming out of COVID, so it's like, okay, can we actually meet again? Do we elbow bump? Can we shake hands? Do we have to wear masks? And so I've been hearing, and I've served on the board of directors of one group probably 10 years ago, and I've been on the policy committee of the other one for the last 11 years. And I keep hearing the technology is getting better and better and better. Well, it still wasn't solving the problem. So I came back from those meetings frustrated, and we had just onboarded a client and went through the standard process. And the amount of time it takes, both for the clients and for our staff, I just thought there's got to be a better way. And I thought, well, doggone it, if nobody else is going to fix this, I guess I'm going to have to. And so we conceived the fund. We met with attorneys, with accountants, other industry experts. And so we began in earnest in July, and we opened January 1, 2022. So 9 quarters now.
And how interesting and how fun has it been having your own fund?
Oh, it's a full range of emotions. I mean, you start off with what you know, what you don't know, and what you don't know that you don't know. And you hope you're going to close that last bucket out. We've learned a lot. It's been incredibly frustrating. It's been much harder than we thought it was going to be. But the clients have all been well served by it, really, even beginning day one. It's just that about 5 of us have had to wear 2 hats for a couple of years. We opened up at Fidelity in January. We're already on Schwab, TD Ameritrade, and a couple of other custodians. And so we're beginning to get outside investors to invest through their advisors in our fund. And so we're hiring more staff to be able to build really a second team out. And I'm incredibly proud of it. If we had known how hard it was going to be, I don't know we would have undertaken it. But by the same token, now that it's really working well, a lot of pride, amongst all of us that we played a part in it.
And what does it specialize in?
So in order to build out an endowment fund, you can't buy things that trade every day. You want to buy real estate, private equity, private credit that value. They can value daily, but these are long-term investments. Generally, with real estate, with private credit, if making loans to companies, you're going to have those loans in place 3 to 5 years. Real estate typically takes 5 to 7 years to develop, and then private equity can be anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So these are what are known as illiquid investments. And the hope is you get an illiquidity premium. If you're willing to tie your money up for a while, you should make more money from it because illiquidity is a risk factor. It should have a benefit that corresponds to it. Some people try to buy traded real estate trust funds that you can buy and sell every day, but they tend to perform closer to the S&P 500. And so you're not really getting the benefit of illiquidity and low or non-correlation.
Right.
So we took the things that are really hard to do, that are supposed to be illiquid, and we put all 3 of them into our fund. And the hope is that with our fund, we can get a higher risk-adjusted return for the average client. More important than that, there's something called behavioral finance, which is finally a full part of the curriculum for certified financial planners. Yeah. And people have a tendency to buy high on enthusiasm and sell low in despair.
Right.
And if you buy high and sell low often enough, you can pretty much get rid of your nest egg.
Right.
So the idea is to pick a good strategy and then stay with it And one of the things I'm so proud of our client group is oftentimes when there's a big correction in the stock market, they'll call and say, hey, I've got this extra money over here. Is now the time to buy? Whereas most financial advisors, when you get a big correction, most recently, probably March of 2020 when COVID first hit, people are, in despair, and they're just calling sell, sell, sell. The other thing that people don't realize is that down hurts more than up helps. So, for example, if you've got $1 million portfolio and it's all in stock, and you have one of those tech corrections like you saw, or the great financial crisis, your portfolio is down 50%.
Right.
Now you're at 500,000. You don't need it to go back up to 50% to get back where you were. Now you need it to go back up 100% to get back where you were, because it's on a smaller dollar amount. And so the whole idea of using alternative investments to balance portfolios is to keep people on track, not let them be victim to behavioral finance, and stay with their portfolio through thick and thin, and not panic over, get overly enthusiastic when something's shooting up, or get overly despair when something's dropping.
And that's what I really appreciate about how you serve your clients, is it's through education. Like, you have these talks with your clients about all of these different asset types, which most financial advisors wouldn't.
Well, it does take more time, but I think, I've told many people that are kicking the tires, I say, look, interview multiple financial advisors. If you're in your, really any time, but especially if you're in your 50s or 60s, this is hopefully the last time you're going to have to go through this. Pick an advisory firm that you think you can stay with, for the rest of your lives. I've told people, look, I don't want to be your next financial advisor. I want to be your last financial advisor.
Right.
And so I encourage people, because it is more work to get things set up. And we probably are not as big a firm as we might have been if we were more, I guess, better salespeople. I think of us as educators, where we present options and try to help people make, well-informed decisions.
And the one thing that I really, again, also love about AOG is the fact that it does do so much philanthropy, and that you care about each one of your staff members and what their philanthropy goals are. And when I get to talk to your staff, I get to hear about the moments that they really enjoyed about working with AOG. And there's been a food kitchen that you guys have done. There's just been so many different events that you've done throughout the years. So tell me, why do you really encourage, what does it do for your staff when you bring them all together around a community event?
Well, understand that most of our time we were working.
Not really now.
And, that we have a bottom line. We have goals that we try to achieve. Everybody that works at our firm has an incentive-based compensation in addition to their regular paycheck. So it's not like we're taking our eye off the bottom line. But, again, if you're going to spend this much time together, I think it probably makes us a more productive, holistic firm, because we do occasionally set some time aside, whether it's, doing education for a high school or a middle school, or doing the food kitchen, food pantry together. The team has come out and done my walk with me a couple of times, for the Foundation Fighting Blindness. We've served at Jill's house, and I think it makes us better. And I'm told that we're a bit unusual. It's not like we haven't had some turnover over the years, but when I think about our team as it stands right now, we've got 4 people that have been there 15, 16 years. 10 years, 7 years. We've got some longevity among our leadership. We have a receptionist that's only been there a year, but her predecessor, who's now licensed, has been with us for 5 years. And so those are the 2 people who have been with us the least amount of time.
Awesome. All right. Well, Fred, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate hearing, again, your journey, everything that you've gone through, and really love what you're doing and support you 100%. So,
well, if I can say, I've loved watching you from the first time you joined United Charitable and seeing your progress to leadership and the amazing things you do for the community.
Thank you.
And it's just been a pleasure to watch the progress. We were using some larger donor advised funds previously, but it was, once we did our diligence, it was an easy decision. You're so responsive. You take such good care of the funds. I was just trying to send a contribution into the Foundation Fighting Blindness last week, and it got a slight delay because they hadn't filed the proper form. And I love the fact that you guys check that stuff, because I would never do that.
Right.
And so the fact that you're as careful and as prudent as fiduciaries, gives me great confidence. And again, I've seen so many clients utilize your service, and it just has been, it's made their lives more impactful, not just what they do, but they themselves, are impacted by it.
Yeah.
And so you're the real deal.
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred.
Sure.
Find Inspired Changemakers on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and comment on all the awesome things you are doing to make this world a better place. Don't forget to subscribe.